Welcome to the Real Life Magic Virtual Summit. My name is Allysha Lavino, and I'm honored to serve as your host. We have a wonderful guest here with us. Karen Chaston ran on the corporate treadmill until the day the world came crashing down around her. Tragedy struck, and her son Dan suddenly and unexpectedly died at her back door at the age of 27. But in many ways, that was where Karen's journey began. She left the corporate world and, with the guidance and wisdom of her son on the other side, began the journey to discover and uncover the vast gifts of grief and share them with the world. Karen Chaston, welcome to our summit.
Hi, Allysha. How are you? So good to be here.
Hey, I am well, and you are looking gorgeous this morning. I'm so glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to discover and train your unique magic.
Well, I have to say, I guess it's life. You know, we really don't value our experiences so much, but they are leading us somewhere. And as you just mentioned, my son Dan passed away, back in 2011 when he was only 27. And at that time, I was a CFO of a publicly listed company here in Australia. And I really wasn't living and loving my life. Sure, I was loving the salary and I thought I really, really loved my job. But when life sort of sends you these different events, I now know that it's to sort of help you to pivot, to maybe get back on track. Maybe life has taken you off, your purpose, off where you're meant to be. And I just love my life and who I am. And I know a lot of people go, but Karen, your son's on the other side. Like, you lost a son. How can you be so happy and so positive? And I'm like, because he's here in every single way apart from the physical. And I think I spend more time with him than I do with his two brothers, but don't tell them.
What a great way to say that. So you actually call yourself the co-founder of your company, and your partner is your son, Dan, on the other side. How does that work?
Oh my God. He has given me so much guidance from the other side that how could I not call him the co-founder? It's when we tap into our wisdom, our intuition, our guidance, and we all have it. I don't care what anyone says, we all have it. And it's really a matter of us just remembering, because we do know everything. But we've just, as we sort of slipped into our mortal bodies, we just sort of forgot it all. And our journey through life is to remember it again and to have these different experiences to make that happen. So how could I not? He helps me remember every single day. And he also helps me to realize that there are no coincidences. Everything that happens, has a message for you, a guidance or something for you to be aware of. And that's why he's the co-founder. And I say all the time, oh, Dan does this. And he says, Mom, you're the one doing the actions. And I'm going, yeah, you're right. I do the actions, but you're the one that sort of puts that little thought in my mind. Believe me, he has me doing these crazy things.
Well, I love the courage, and I don't even know what that quality is, the willingness really to take those actions, right? To hear that little voice and to go, you know what? That's Dan. He's got a message, and I'm going to take that action and see where it leads. What do you think prepared you? How did you become this person who is willing to take that action based on this sense of intuition and connection?
I guess I always sort of had it. Even though I became an accountant, so I'm very sort of mechanical minded and stuff like that. Even from a young age, I was brought up Catholic, and I sort of knew that there was a lot of good in it, but there was also a lot of not so ideal in the Catholic religion. And we're not going to go into that because we'll be here for days. But I also knew that there was a spiritual aspect to it, and I always went looking. And I went to my first clairvoyant, I think, when I was like 21. And so I always had that I'd dip into here and I'd dip into there. So I was aware of it. And then I think through Dan passing, I remember back in 2001, one of my sisters, and I'm from a family of 7. You can tell we're Catholics, can't you? So I'm like the third eldest of 7 children. And my older sister, she actually gave me this book to read, Life on the Other Side by Sylvia Browne. Have you read it?
I haven't. I've definitely heard of it.
Oh my God, it's such a great book. And I read it in 2001, and it was one of those books, it was my first book that I've ever read, and I went, I know this. I've never heard it before, but I know it. I know it. I just had a knowing in every single thing that she was saying. And it was great because she actually, through her guide here, and she was a clairvoyant medium channeler, and her guide was telling her what we do before we come down here, how we choose the life we're going to live, choose our parents, choose our experiences so we can grow spiritually. And then what happens when we pass. So then 10 years later when Dan passed, and it was a sudden pass because he literally was, we thought, a healthy 27-year-old who went out the night before with his mates, and sure, he drank too much. And then we found him the next morning dead at our back door. So it's like, oh my God. So it was very, very sudden. He wasn't sick, nothing, but we then found out that it was actually his lungs that had failed him. And 2 years earlier, he'd been in Scotland and he'd had pneumonia and spent a week in hospital. So it could have been, they said his lungs were so bad that if he had smoked full on for 10, 12 years, which he hadn't, he was a social smoker, he couldn't have done a quarter of the damage to his lungs. So he fell over and he went to catch his breath and then he couldn't. And that's why he passed. But the beauty, not the beauty of him passing, but when he passed so suddenly, a lot of people just could not cope with, oh my God, he's gone. And just one of them was one of my best girlfriends who used to babysit him when he was younger. And she was not coping. She was actually worse than me. She was like, I can't get out of bed. I can't stop thinking about Dan. And she still has photos in her house of Dan everywhere, which is so beautiful. And she says she talks to him all the time. So I bought 10 copies of this book, Life on the Other Side by Sylvia Browne, because it was like I had a little insight into what he was doing on the other side. So it's just so beautiful. And there are so many spiritual books around. And I'm sure you're aware with what you're doing, Allysha, that there's get more and more and more awareness on us actually being connected, and we're moving more into the 5th dimension, which is so amazing. And I've got so many spiritual advisors now, I just seem to be a magnet for them, which is great.
It's wonderful to hear you describe reading that book and really just knowing the rightness of it. And I think that that's such an important point, that when we encounter spiritual information, and there's so much out there, right? There's a ton just in this summit, that when it hits us, there's something innate in the body that goes, yes, this is right. This matches me. This matches what I know and feel inside. And I love to hear you speak to that, because that kind of gnosis is really what has us connect, and what has that magic and that wisdom be available to us. I'm always encouraging people to look for that. If somebody says something, don't just take it with a grain of salt. Really try it on and go, oh, okay, yes, this is right for me.
Yeah, but the tingles, the tingles all down your arms. So many people ignore those tingles. It's like, no, that's the God tick. It's like hey, listen to this. I'm tingling your body so you actually listen to this. So like it can't get any easier than that, can it?
There's so much wisdom in the body, right? And we do so many things in the modern world. We move so quickly, and we often eat things and watch things that kind of dumb down those innate senses. But when we actually start to listen, and when we start to cultivate those senses, it's pretty fantastic. It's a really wild, living on the edge kind of experience.
Yeah, totally.
So let's talk a little bit about grief. This is something that I think a lot of people have a difficult experience with, but I think you have had a different experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with grief?
Well, I'm really comfortable with it now. And I totally agree that so many people are uncomfortable around grief. They don't want to talk about it, they don't want to think about it. And not many people even know what to say when, grief and loss comes into our lives or someone else's life. When Dan passed, I literally went straight back to work the day after his funeral. And I did all of the key cliches, all of the advice which had probably led to, the 5 stages of grief and all those sort of things coming into light. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to grieve and suffer when we understand a few things. So the first thing I'd like to explain is our relationships. Okay, so our relationship, whether it's with a person, a place, or a thing, they have three components. So the first component is the physical. Okay, the physical relationship, and the physical relationship is the way that we hang out together. The things we do, the things we say, even the way we touch each other. Okay. The second component of a relationship is the emotional part. And that is all encompassing of all of our feelings, the good, the bad, the glad, and the sad. And the last one is the spiritual. And the spiritual, as we know, is the intangible. We don't know why we are connected so much to this person, place, and thing, and a lot of the time instantaneously. But we just know that we're connected. So when a loss event occurs, and we're going to talk about, there's over 40 different loss events. Most people just think, oh, it's a death of a loved one, but no, there are so many more. And this pandemic that we're all experiencing has brought up a lot of the minor ones. So when the loss event occurs, it is the physical relationship that ends, because we're not going to hang out together the way we used to. Okay? But it's the emotional relationship that causes us all the grieving and suffering. And what happens is when it occurs, our unconscious mind goes into what I call this unconscious loss loop. So it goes in and it starts asking ourselves questions like, why did I do that? Why didn't I do that? Why did they say that? Why didn't they say that? Why did we put this off? Why? But they're unconscious. So our body is giving us all of these feelings for us to actually look at and feel and figure out what the question is that this feeling is trying to help us to resolve. Because the feelings are painful, we shove them down and we ignore them and we avoid them, and we do all these avoidance tactics, behaviors, which are not healthy. So therefore we get into another loop of the avoidance loop, or because we don't want to deal with these emotions. But the emotions are energy in motion. So they come in and they move out. And then another emotion will come in and move out. And eventually, when we look at the emotions and deep dive into them, they will stop coming and we'll start to get the feel-good emotions back into our body. But because we're avoiding them, we go into this grief and suffering loop, which can go on for decades, for the rest of our life, never really resolving it. So that's what I do, is I help people to deep dive and answer those questions that they're not even consciously aware of, so that they can have a healthy emotional relationship moving forward. Now, how simple is that?
As simple as feeling those deep, dark emotions, it sounds like.
Yeah, but you know what? It's not like it's a therapy session that's going to go on for years and years and years. If you work one-to-one with me, it's 5 90-minute sessions. Sure, you do a lot of work in between each session, but it's only 5 sessions. So it's not as though it's going to go on forever and ever and ever. And the beauty of it is you then have this process that you can have for the rest of your life. And I totally believe that this process should have been taught to us all at school, just like a maths equation. Would we have valued it? Maybe not. But when something happened to us later in life, we would have gone, what was that? What was it that we were taught? What was it that they actually said? Oh, yeah, right. This is the process. Right. Let's actually do that process. Let's follow that formula, and then we will come out of it. And the beauty of the way we come out of it, we come out with so many realizations about ourselves. More importantly, and we take responsibility for our part in the relationship. Now, a lot of therapy sessions don't really get you to take a lot of responsibility. They get you to sort of blame a lot, blame them, and yeah, they were not narcissists. What's the word? Narcissists and all these sort of things. Whereas when you think, no, wait a minute, let's actually start taking responsibility for who I was in that relationship. Because everyone has their moments where they're not as ideal as what they could have been. We may trigger people, figure out why we're triggering people. So that's, that's what it's about, is you looking at your life, because you're the only person that you're going to spend your entire life with. So it's about you figuring out the best way that you can live and love your life. And that's why I love deep diving into grief, because it doesn't have to be something we fear. It doesn't have to be something that we look at and just don't want. We can learn so much from it. Like, I have changed. I am nothing like I was when Dan passed. Sure, it took me another loss event, as in me choosing to take redundancy 15 months after Dan's pass, for me to actually wake up, because I was following the traditional, this is what you do. Give it time, keep busy, all those sort of cliches, which don't work, because you're not allowing the emotions to give you the messages. And that's what they're doing. They're just messages for you to look into and go, you know what, you're right. I'm not living my best life. You know what, you're right. I was wrong in what I said there. And I was wrong when I did this. But I was right when I did this. And they were right. And I didn't see it. And you know what I mean? It's just a different perspective.
One of the things that I've really noticed in my personal practices is that when you actually sit with an emotion, when you breathe and allow it in and look at it and kind of hold it like a small child and go, yes, dear one, and welcome it, it totally changes the experience of it. It is bizarre and phenomenal. Like, as long as I'm running from how
Yes.
angry I am or how sad I am, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, I'm trying to do everything I can to stuff it down. But the moment I just sit down, take a deep breath, and really allow myself to feel that, there's this kind of sweetness that arises. Like, I can begin to actually see the beauty in it, even though, oh, it's terrible. I can really feel and experience the gifts in it. Is that your experience as well? That when we actually
Totally. Totally. And the funny part about it is, when you actually stop running, as you said, and it's so beautiful the way you just described that, because it's so visual, um, that you can't run away from yourself. So as hard as you try, but the more you do sit with it, and the more you do the experience and ask the question, okay, what is this about? What am I meant to learn? How am I meant to grow from what you are trying to tell me? The more you do that, the less you have to do it. Because it's the emotion has come and it's gone. And sure, another event might happen, and because you're used to doing that process, there won't be as many things that do it. And the beauty of it is that you start to do it with every single one of your relationship. Like, you start to deep dive into them, like, how can I make them better? How can I do all these different things? So when I was 16, I found myself pregnant. Not sure how it happened. Well, yes, I am. And I chose to adopt my daughter out. So here we are, nearly 47 years later. She's in my life, and she's been in my life for the past nearly 20 years, 19 years. And it's been, as you can imagine, a very up and down relationship, because she has a lot of anger and a lot of abandonment, which you can understand. Even though at the time, I honestly did it out of love to give her a better life. So anyway, and her and my relationship was very up and down. So after I've done this grief process with Dan, I started to do it with the baby that I gave up, because I held a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a whole lot of it, as you can imagine. So I did that process with the baby. And once I did the process with the baby, I then started to have a better relationship with the adult, as you can imagine. So there's a lot of relationships in our lives that when we do this process, we actually come to love and gratitude about it. And I even did it with like her father, because as you can imagine, I carried a lot of anger around him for a lot of years. But now I know that he was exactly the person he was meant to be, so that we did adopt our daughter out, so that she experienced what she was meant to experience. And so, and obviously I did as well. So it's really deep, and I know that it's sort of probably going off into a way that we weren't really sure we were going to go. But it's a process that we all do. But the process actually came to the fact that when her and I got together and we were both drinking alcohol, it would always end up in a fight, right? So I stopped drinking. And she wasn't the only reason I stopped drinking, but because I also stopped drinking because I know that when I don't have alcohol in my system, I connect higher to Dan, and that was really important to me. After all, he's giving me all this guidance, so I wanted to be able to connect with him. So my last drink was on the 30th of December 2018. And I used to drink, right, in my corporate days and after Dan passed, I used to drink a bottle of wine a night. So I drank a fair bit. I stopped. That was my last drink. I have never missed it. I have never craved it. And sure, initially all my friends were like, you have to drink. Like, you're the life of the party. There's no way you cannot drink. But now if I had a drink, they'll be going, what's wrong? Why are you drinking? What's happening? So it's just that little phase where you go through. And that's what you do. You start to look at all of your habits and you start to go, is this serving me? And I found that me drinking was not serving me or any of my relationships on this side or the other side.
There are so many different kinds of things that can lead us into this process of self-discovery. But I think grief is so prevalent that most people don't even realize that that might be what is affecting them, especially, as you said, right now with the pandemic, we're all experiencing different kinds of loss. So let's talk about what are some of the different kinds of things that can cause grief.
Okay. So I'll share my screen because this is quite incredible when you look at these. So these are the 40 plus different loss events that you can look at. And sure, the most 6 common ones are death of a loved one, a divorce, separation, a job loss, your health, your wealth, even your pets. But in this recent pandemic, things like loss of freedom, loss of choice, loss of status, changing work conditions, changing recreational activities, changing social activities are really affecting a lot of people. So when you look at this thing, some people might go, wow, I would never have thought that would, be a loss event. Something which can be seen as a joyous occasion, pregnancy, but you're losing who you were. You're losing that lifestyle. So a lot of joyous occasions do have a little bit of loss attached to it. And when you recognize the loss and you become comfortable and you do that emotional journey with what you're about to lose, so that you then come into the feel good hormones completely about, well, you haven't lost it, it's what you've gained. And there's no such thing as loss and gain. You know what I mean? It's just we're moving on to the next part of our life. So many people get fixated with wanting to look young and be young and do all those sort of things. But I'm 63 now, and I have to say one of the greatest advantages of becoming older is the wisdom. And you really, you might be able to learn and hear people talk about their adventures, but it's through what you experience that you gain this wisdom when you choose to really deep dive into it. And that's what I love more than anything else, is you become so much wiser, and you become so more into yourself in a loving way, that you start to realize that it so much doesn't matter. Like I can remember when I was younger, oh my God, my opinion was the right opinion, and I would argue all night long with you. Whereas now I just sort of go, oh, that's interesting. And I just leave it at that. Because what's the point? Why am I trying to say my opinion's the right opinion? We live in a infinite world of possibilities. So why is my way the right way? It's like, okay, that's a different way of looking at it. Or yeah.
Now, some of the things on this list seem like they don't belong. I'm looking at
Mhm.
outstanding personal achievement
Okay, well, let's
or
stick. Okay, yeah, look at that one. Everyone seems to 0 point on that. I'm not sure if it's where I've listed, but let's think about it. Let's look at a athlete, a a swimming star, right? An Olympian swimming star. They reach that gold medal like probably by the before they're 20. They've now got the rest of their life to live. And you hear so many of them, oh, I wish I could go back and I wish I could do this. Or, I've never been able to achieve that status. So they've never come comfortable with the fact that, yes, they achieved that at a young age. What are they now? Do you remember that show, Married with Children? Do you remember the father, Al Bundy? He would always talk about how he was a high school football star, and he's now in his 50s. It's like, what have you done in between? So it's about realizing that, yes, were an outstanding achievement at that age, but you always can, achieve something else differently. How many one hit wonders have we heard, and never heard them again? It's because they're always trying to make that again. Whereas it's like, no, we're not going to replicate that. Let's do something differently now. Let's achieve in a different way.
that's great. Another one that stands out is gaining a new family member.
Yeah, well, you're changing the dynamics, of the family unit. And what's really interesting about the family unit, and it really is highlighted in my large family, where the one I grew up in, of 9 people with our parents, every single one of us are different. And that's on purpose, because that's how you create balance in a family. The fact that everyone is different. Like if we were all exactly the same, we'd all be a bit lopsided. So when you bring someone else in, the dynamics is going to change. So, and especially if it's a baby. So that's definitely going to change for a little while. Like, my mum had 6 girls, and then 5 years after the youngest girl, we had our brother born. And yes, he is the golden child, but I was 8 when he was born. So even though it was great to have a baby in the home, it does change the dynamics. So, yeah.
So it sounds like there are more types of loss than we can
Yes.
even really imagine. That even the things that might look like a gain are actually creating something to change in such a
Yes.
way that there's an internal as well as an external adjustment.
Exactly. And that's what loss is all about. It's change. You are going to be different today than you were yesterday because of this loss event. So it's about asking your set questions. What does this mean for me now in every single area of my life? It's not, it's, and it is about honoring, if it's a death or it's a divorce and stuff, it is about honoring the past, but it's more about learning from the past so that you can create a better future.
So I'd love to get into a little bit of the anatomy of grief. A lot of people are
Mhm.
familiar with the five stages, but the experience is so much more complex than that. Can you
Yeah.
speak to some of the different phases of grief, what it can look like and feel like?
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at Kubler-Ross because she's the one that researched and she did this amazing research and she came up with the five stages of grief. And what she found was right because that's the way we've been doing grief for centuries. You know, we will go through this, we'll go into denial, we'll go into bargaining, we will go into depression maybe. And we'll keep going in and out of them in no, particular order before we come to acceptance. Okay? Now, we can come to acceptance very, very easily when we take the time to stop and ask that question: what does it mean for me now? Okay. And it's, of course, your life is different. It's going to be different, but maybe it's meant to be different. Maybe you chose it to be different at this time. Maybe you chose this to happen. And I know we all go, there's no way I would have ever chosen this. Would I have ever chosen for Dan to pass? I like to think no, but I sort of know that we did. Dan and I planned it. I was never ever going to wake up from my Groundhog Day days of me in corporate because I wasn't even aware that I was in these days. I thought that was the way that you are successful in life. But I was dying on the inside. And I honestly believe that if I was still there, I probably would be sick now. I would have got a heart attack, a stroke, type 2 diabetes. And most of my peers were exactly the same because I wasn't looking after me. I was putting me last. So that's what it is in my 5 steps. And I call it the gift of loss because there is always a gift when you choose to deep dive into it. This loss is happening to you so that you can actually work through this pile of dirt so that you can actually figure out what the gems are, where the treasures are. And the treasure is you because it's about you figuring out what this means for you to stop putting yourself last so that you can actually deep dive in and say, okay, so what does this mean for me mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually? How about my relationships? How about my job? How about my financial status? Really deep dive into it so that you can figure out exactly where you are. Because when you know where you are, you can start to plan where you want to be. But until you do that deep dive and you keep avoiding it, you're never going to go, well, right, this is my situation. I want to be here. So, how do I close that gap so I get there? What do I need to learn? How do I need to grow? What skills do I require? Because there's no reason why I can't achieve all my dreams. And that's what it's about. But it is about you asking yourself those tough questions. And most people don't. They're too much in avoidance. We have created $1 trillion alcohol, pharmaceutical industries. Just look at the suicide rate. All because we don't know how to get out of this state of grief, depression, avoidance. And we can easily get out of it when we actually stop. That's what this pandemic's about. It's telling us all to stop. And the ones who are not, who are thriving in it, are the ones who have probably done the stopping years ago. Like I stopped in 2014, 2013. 2 years after Dan, that's when I started to do the stop, started to do the deep dive. And it's not easy. All your demons are going to come up. All of your insecurities, all of you, oh, that's not possible. I can't do that. And even though all of your friends are going, yes, you can do that. Does that make sense?
It does. So that's great. Do you have any tools or practices for us that we could actually put into place to experience grief in an empowered way. I actually have kind of an example for this. So my father passed away a few months ago. And this is something that I really embraced. I also talked to him on the other side, and that I took full on and have been throughout the process of it really willing to step in and feel those feelings and ask myself those questions, and have changed several things in my life as a result. But one of the things that keeps coming up and keeps coming back is anger. And I'm not angry with him. I'm not angry with anyone. I understand that he passed and in some ways had been waiting for it. Um, and I've never felt anything like this because it doesn't have a cause per se. There's nothing that I'm mad at. And it's a feeling that is bigger than almost anything I've ever felt. And I'm kind of a big emotions gal. So I'd love to just hear, how do we deal with some of the stuff that just comes up right in our face when we are in the presence of something changing so dramatically like that?
Journaling. I'm a big journaler, and I was I a journaler when I was younger? Probably not. When you live in a big family, you don't do journals because everyone will read it and hold it against you. But as I got older, and especially after Dan, so one of my practices was my gratitude journal. And I loved gratitude journals so much. It really did help me to heal. Um, you know, with Dan passing, that I actually created my own because the ones I was using were beautiful on the outside but blank on the inside. So I created my own gratitude journals. But I find journaling is the best way to get into any emotion and start with the question, why do I feel this? And then just it's like you go into like automatic writing where you just allow, you can, filter into it. I actually do a process before I journal that I actually connect to my higher self. And if anyone wants to contact me, I'll give you the process because it takes a little bit, it's a process. So it takes a little while. So to connect to your higher self, and yes, we all have our higher selves and we all can connect to them. And you just get the guidance, and it's asking yourself that question, like, what is this about? What is it really about? Why am I angry? And you just start automatically writing and you don't filter it. And then when you stop writing, you ask the question, is that all? And then you may have more. And then when you stop again, is that all? And you just keep asking each time you stop, is there more? Is there more? And eventually there will be no more. Then you read it back, and then you'll find in what you've written down a lot of guidance that the anger may be, who knows, it may be something that happened to you in your childhood that you really haven't forgiven your dad about. You know, my dad and I, my dad and I were very similar. Of all of my sisters, I was very much like my dad. And we got on when I was younger, but as we got older, we didn't get on. And I guess me falling pregnant at 16 didn't help because my dad was very, very religious. And obviously in the early 70s, there was a lot of shame and stuff around it, not only from my perspective, but from my parents' perspective. So when I was younger, my dad, he worked out of our backyard. He was building his business, and I used to go and help him. He was a tractor mechanic, and he would, buy tractor parts and do them up and resell them and all that sort of stuff. So I used to be his little assistant. And I went out there, and I was only, 3 and 4 and stuff. And I'd go out there and I'd hand him all the tools and I'd do all this sort of stuff. Then one day I made this mistake. And the next day he sent me away, and he made me go away every day. And I was like, oh my God. So I carried that for a long time. And I was in my 50s when I did one of these exercises. I went, oh my God, he didn't send me away. He sent me to school. But in my little mind, I had associated that mistake with him sending me away. And I carried that all of my life, like for 50 odd years. And when I had it, and he'd already passed at that stage, I just went, oh my God, Dad, I'm so sorry. But then I got a lot of, it's all going to come up, a lot of stuff like, oh my God, we had that relationship because I had that inside me. So I'm only suggesting, it may or may not be the case, that there may be something inside of you that you're still angry about, that you've forgotten about. So when you do these exercises and you start to actually ask your higher self, because your higher self knows every single moment, not only of this life, but of all of your lives, but and you will trace you back. And you could start with saying, is there something that happened between 0 and 5? I don't know. Another great thing is a pendulum. Like, let me see, is a pendulum to ask yourself some questions. And I don't know if you use that, but it will get you, just use a pendulum. But you got to set it up. And to set it up is really quite simple. I'm just going to get it so it's in the picture. So you can say, show me my yes, right? Now you can see it's moving backwards and forwards. That's my yes. Then you say, show me my no. See how it's moved side to side. Show me my maybe. It's now going around in a circle. So that's my yes, no, and maybe. Now, some people have it completely different, but you've got to figure out what your yes, no is. Another question you ask is, am I hydrated? Right? And you've got to be hydrated. So, yes, I'm hydrated. Because if you're not hydrated, you're going to get a false positive. So once you've set yourself up and you know your yes, you know, you can then ask yourself some questions. Am I angry with my dad? Oh, good, mine comes up no, because I'm not. And I have to say, I have a better relationship with my dad on the other side than I do when he was here. Like, we're really connected, and he's always showing me sides he's with me, so much so that he actually goes, stop saying Dan does everything for you. I also help you. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's just easy to go, damn, sort of thing. So that's something else. Is a great tool, is a pendulum for you to start asking those. But they've got to be yes and no questions. Like, you can't say, something that you want a thing for, but you can word the question so you can end up with a yes and no. And then you could sort of, you can say, is it, if it comes up, yes, I'm angry with my dad, is it something that happened between 0 and 5? Ask that. 5 and 10. So pinpoint it down to a timeline in your thing, and then you can do that. Do they help?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I love the format that you gave for journaling. Sounds really specific, but also really free, right? So write it and keep asking, is that all? Is that all? Is that all? And then go back and read it. As a writer, I sometimes can either filter my journal entries to try to make them, more beautiful, more intelligent, more cohesively, writer-esque.
Yeah.
Or also, as a writer, I don't always go back to read them right away, because when I'm writing something that I might want to publish, it's important to let it rest and give it time before I go back and bring an editor's eye to it. But this is really different, right? This is staying with the emotion and staying with the process and seeing what's coming out unfiltered, and then going back and really looking at that unedited story and seeing how it lands. So I love that. Feels really good.
Our conscious mind limits us so much, and we forget that. We forget that our conscious mind is in a situation, it's got to be right or wrong. You know what I mean? Whereas when we just allow, we actually and connect to your heart space before you start as well. Do a process where you actually breathe into your heart and actually see the breath coming out of your heart, and like, just command, just say to your guides, to your spirits, I command that you assist me to write from the heart, and then you will. You just click it. You just go, so it is. I've got a lot of little tools like that, which I've gathered, obviously.
That's great. And I love that you brought up the pendulum as well. I think that is such a fun tool to be able to bring things from the inside out. right?
Yes.
Because now you have several different things working in harmony to give some really specific answers, right? Sometimes we
Yes.
can kind of fool ourselves when we're having a conversation, between our heart and our head and everything's internal. So as we start to use these tools to bring things outside ourselves, we can really come face to face with them. We can see what those answers are and see what's really happening.
Yes.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges of growing through grief that people might encounter?
Other people's opinions. You know, so often we seek other people's approval, we seek their guidance, and we've got to remember that people feel that they're saying the right things to you, and you know they're coming from their belief system, their limiting belief systems, and they're coming from their awareness. No one has ever walked in your shoes. No one has ever experienced what you're experiencing. No one knows how you feel. They may think they know how you feel, but no one knows how you feel. No one was with you in that relationship that has just ended, any of these loss events. So no one understands the whole complexity of it. So that's why when we have all these cliches and we have all these ways and the things that people say, people just say things without even realizing it. Like one of my greatest pet hates, and I know I used to say it before Dan passed, but I will never ever say it now. And I hear it all the time on movies and shows, and it really irritates me. It is when someone says, "I'm sorry for your loss." I'm like, I don't get that. Like, I seriously do not get that now. When I say I'm sorry, it's because I've done or said something that was not ideal. So, how can a total, complete stranger say to me, I'm sorry for your loss? It's a flippant way of people saying it because I don't know how to cope with this. So, if I say this, I've done it. And it's because we've said it for centuries and centuries and centuries. My condolences is more heartfelt than I'm sorry for your loss. It's just a oh my God, this is really painful. I don't want to get into this. I don't want you to cry. So I'm just going to say that. And it's because we're not comfortable around loss. And it was really funny, earlier in the year, I was on a similar show like this with a guy in the UK, and he was late 20s, and he said to me, Karen, can you please tell me what to say at a funeral? I went to a friend's funeral a couple of weeks ago, and there was like 10 of us. We're all mates. The guy had committed suicide, and we all knew his parents, but we were all in a huddle, and we were all going, what do we say? What do we say? I don't know what to say to them. And they're all going, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So they didn't really go up and say anything because they didn't want to say the wrong thing. So he said, Karen, please tell me what to say. And I said, that's what you say. And he goes, what do you mean? What? And I say, you just walk up to the parents and you say, I don't know what to say. I don't know what you're experiencing. I feel it must be horrific, but I just don't know what to say to you. But I'd like to be here for you. So can you please tell me the best way to be here for you, to assist you in any way? And I said, and then you just shut up and listen, but not listening to respond, listening to know how to be there for them. And I said, and that is something you can say in any single loss event. You'll always get a different answer. You'll always get a different response. But don't you feel that is so much more beautiful than saying, I'm sorry for your loss and moving on?
I know in my experience, it meant so much to me when people just came forward and said, I just want you to know I'm here.
Yeah.
We're often at a loss in that situation. Like that's where loss really comes in. I'm at a loss for what to say.
Yeah.
But I found that the people who courageously said something, who came forward and said, "Hi, I'm here," that really made a difference for me. And I could see where in my past I had avoided that for not knowing what to
Yeah.
say. I didn't want to say something wrong. I felt like I could somehow break the situation. And the joke was, as soon as I was on the other side of it, I was kind of like, well, you're not going to do anything wrong. Like, you're not going to mess this up more. I've got a lot going on. It has nothing to do with you.
But people make it about them. And that's what's really sad. And the person who's the one who's grieving ends up consoling the other person, and you go, wait a minute, it's not about you. And it's not about ourselves either. It's about, this is what's happened, and we can all move on. So, yeah. But, you get a week. I've found you get a week at the most. People are happy to give you a week. And then after that, haven't you moved on? Well, why haven't you moved on? What's wrong with you? And that's where the pain and the suffering really comes, because people don't understand. And that's when you need the people more than anything else to just say, look, I'm here for you. Just let me know how I can help you. I saw people cross the road so they didn't have to talk to me. And you're just like, seriously? Like, I'm not going to break down in front of you. But it is, people make it about themselves. And it doesn't have to be. And that's why I do what I do, because it is time that we all got comfortable around loss. There are over 40 different loss events that are going to affect our lives. We are all going to have multiple loss events in our life. When we know how to move on with ease and figure it out, the world will become a better place, because we won't be using all these avoidant tactics. We will be living and loving our lives. The suicide rate will go down. We won't be suffering in silence, in isolation. And that's why I do what I do.
Oh, I love it, Karen. That's really what this summit is about training ourselves and training together to
Yes.
uncover our truth, to step into our magic, and to be, dare I say it, the new humans for a new era on planet Earth. And that
Oh,
means
yeah.
that
We
means
are all bouncing forward. We are not going back. We are all bouncing forward into a new world. And I'm really quite excited about it, because I honestly believe, it's about us all connecting more, no matter where we are. Look at us, we're on the other sides of the world, and, we're connected. And I've got to say, congratulations for having the courage to create this summit, because it's required. And good on you for, stepping out and doing it.
well, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to connect with amazing people like you around the world who have so much wisdom to share. Thank you so much for being a part of our Real Life Magic Virtual Summit.
Thank you for having me. I've loved chatting with you.
What is the best way for people to find you online?
Well, I've got two websites. One is livelovebydesign.com, and the other one is Karen Chaston, and you can see it spelt in the background. So karenchaston.com. And if you go there, there's some downloads. You can connect with me, and all the links are also below this video. So reach out, because life is way too short for anyone to be spending their time grieving and suffering.
Thank you once again for being a part of our summit, Karen.
Bye.